This is a new quilt called Sassy Dragonflies, and I've put the pieces together with freezer paper on the top of the pieces, leaving the seam allowance and using it as a guide to sew perfectly. You can see the dragonflies points are pretty accurate, as are all of the pieces. It's a 2-block pattern available on Etsy at Artwerquilts. And I'm Wendy Annan. And this is a video on how to do the freezer paper piecing. This is the dragonfly block that we're trying to make. And I've pieced 4 parts together. I'm always ironing upward. I've got my pattern underneath to look at. And I'll show you how I curve piece. I have freezer paper glued on, and I reuse the freezer paper in the cut shapes. And then I put the freezer papers together, the right sides, and I peek underneath, kind of peel off the corner of the freezer paper so that I can line up the 2 edges. See that? Where they're exactly supposed to meet, that's where I'm going to sew. And I keep my rough edges a 1/4 inch apart, aligned, a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this one has a joint, so I peek underneath sometimes to check that my joint is aligned. And I'm going to stop at the joint, at the thread line, and pivot my piece so that the rough edges align again. And when you open it up, it pretty much matches perfectly. You can reposition on the iron if you want them to be exactly perfect. This one is pretty good. Now we're putting our last piece on. I've got this pretty well ironed on. I had to move this over just a little bit so that this corner matches. Now what I'm going to do is line up this edge first. I'm ironed upward, and I'm still going to peek underneath and get the points aligned, but for a 1/4 inch I'm aligned here. So I'm going to sew for about a 1/4 inch off the raw edge. Now I'm going to pivot. Now I'm going to pivot and match this 1/4 edge as I go. I can peek underneath and line up those freezer papers. As soon as they get the raw edges don't line up, I have to pivot this curve. You just stay within a 1/4 inch. You open it up and see that, take the paper pieces off. You can reuse them for other blocks. Oops. That's a pretty good seam. Sometimes I sew for about a 1/2 inch, and then I open it up to see if I'm aligned correctly. If I'm not, I just seam rip it and move it up or down. This is the hardest one to get all these to join together. Just doing a little quilting on the dragon wings. Hope you enjoyed the video. Go to Etsy.com and search Sassy Dragonflies.